major storyline emerging from the debate is President Biden's performance, with some Democrats and allies implying he should bow out of the race, concerned this matchup did more harm than good. But what the candidates didn't say is also under the microscope. Let's bring in Dr. Lillian Glass, who's known as a queen of communication and renowned body language expert. Good morning, Dr. Glass.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Great to have you. It seems that there's not much debate this morning on which candidate did better. What was your biggest conclusion after watching last night?
That's true. We really saw President Biden in trouble, and we saw that he didn't make sense often, and we saw that he was looking down. His body language did not match the words he was saying. He stammered quite a bit. He was not articulate. His voice died off at the end. He wasn't strong, as opposed to Donald Trump, who had a resonant, rich tone, and he really spoke his mind. He really said it like it is. He definitely did not mince words, especially when he told Biden, when he said to him, you know, the veterans don't like you. He was just very bold, but he came across very confident and very reserved in terms of Trump. We still saw some Trumpisms where he would talk about his health and how he had the best health of everybody. So that was still evident. But with Biden, we really saw a lot of problems. And we saw that he was not articulate. He didn't make sense. In fact, Donald Trump said, I don't understand what he said. In fact, he doesn't understand what he said. And that was true, because he would bring things up that had nothing to do with the question or anything. He's talking about Black people, and he's bringing up lead pipes. And it was just, and he's talking about the Peace Corps and things that just did not make sense.
I do want to bring up Trump's body language, Dr. Glass, if that's okay, because while Biden was speaking, we saw the former president smiling. He was looking off in the distance. What did you make of his body language last night?
Well, when he was trying to contain himself. This was the most contained we've ever seen him. So when he didn't agree with something, usually he bursts out. So you saw him smirking in order to have some self-control. And it worked, because he didn't burst out. So that did work for him in his favor. But his body language matched what he was saying. He made sense. And that is really a big takeaway from the whole debate.
We have to talk about Biden's facial expressions. During most of the debate, his mouth was slightly open. Some critics have called it a deer in headlights type look. Any conclusion to draw from that?
Definitely a deer in headlights. He looked frightened. He looked like he didn't know where he was at times. He looked away. He didn't know what was going on. He kept staring at Trump. And when Trump kind of really let him have it and talked about Charlottesville, and he just had his mouth open, he was in shock. So there was like a shocked expression constantly, and it was very disconcerting. The eyes were really large, and you wonder what was going on there. Was it a bad Botox situation, or was he just frightened? It was just very disconcerting to see.
I do want to say, in President Biden's defense, and you know this as well, Dr. Glass, he's gotten a reputation for these gaffes, both verbal and nonverbal. Was last night's debate a bit more of the same, or do you think this was an escalation of that type of behavior?
No, this was more of the same. But you were really seeing the deficit, especially in comparison to Trump. There was no contest here when you really saw it. And it was really sad to see that he wasn't able to communicate. He wasn't able to express himself in a presidential way.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. Also, don't forget to click that red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.